Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today's topic is an important topic, gross anatomy of the urinary bladder. In our channel, we have the playlist, gross anatomy of the abdomen, gross anatomy of the pelvis, and we have one more important playlist, important anatomy in 50 videos. If you go through the 50 videos, you'll be able to score 50 to 60% in the university exams. So do subscribe now, keep watching the videos. Now we will move on to the topic. Urinary bladder is a hollow viscous and its function is the reservoir of urine. Position, if you see the position, it varies with the amount of the urine the bladder contains, and also this position changes with age. In children, if you see, in children, it is abdominopelvic. So that is the position in the children. Even when empty, because the pelvic cavity is small, bladder neck lies at the upper level of upper border of symphysis pubis. In adults, it is pelvic organ when empty. So that is when empty, it is a pelvic organ, and the bladder neck lies just above the plane of the lower border of the symphysis pubis. When distended, it becomes abdominopelvic, ascends from the lesser pelvis by displacing the peritoneum from the posterior surface of the infraumbilical part of anterior abdominal wall. The rate of descent of bladder neck, we have seen in the children, it lies at the level of upper border of symphysis pubis. So if you see in this picture, this is the picture in the adult. So this is the symphysis pubis. So normal level of the urinary bladder, this is the bladder neck. So it lies at the lower border of the symphysis pubis in adults. In children, at the upper border of symphysis pubis. So if you see this descent of bladder neck from infancy to childhood is not uniform. Within first 3 years after birth, the neck of the urinary bladder descends rapidly from the upper border of symphysis. From 3 to 9 years, the descent is slow. From 9 years to puberty, the descent is negligible. After puberty only, the neck of urinary bladder reaches the adult position. So that is the position of the urinary bladder. Shape it is, again it changes in shape when distended. So in empty position, it is tetrahedral. So that is when empty, and it is ovoid when distended. Capacity, average capacity varies between 120 to 320 ml. 120 to 320 ml. Mean capacity is 220. Sense of filling of bladder starts at a capacity of 100 to 150 ml, and first desire for micturition usually appears at a capacity of 150 to 250 ml. Physiological capacity of distension of bladder without urine comfort, without undue discomfort, varies with age. In normal adult, it ranges between 250 to 450 ml. That is the physiological capacity of distension of bladder. Whereas in the newborn, it is about 20 to 50 ml. So that is the capacity of the urinary bladder. Changes with age. So this is in newborn. Anatomical capacity of the urinary bladder means the volume of urine just before the rupture of bladder. It amounts to about 1 liter. So this is the physiological and anatomical capacity of the urinary bladder. Now we will see the presenting parts. Presenting parts, we have to see in empty and contracted bladder and in distended bladder. But if the students understand at least one shape of the urinary bladder and its relations, it is important. So now we will see the presenting parts in the empty and contracted bladder. So these are the images of empty and contracted bladder, which is tetrahedral in shape. So this is empty bladder shape, tetrahedral in shape. Bladder presents apex. So this is the apex. Base. So this part is the base. Superior surface and two infralateral surface. So this is one infralateral surface is shown here. Another is on the other side and a neck. So these are the presenting parts of the empty bladder. Apex, it is directed. So this is the apex. Relations, if you see, apex, it is directed forwards to the upper part of symphysis pubis and gives attachment to the median umbilical ligament, which extends up to the umbilicus. Base, so this is the base or postero-inferior surface. It is directed backwards and downwards and it is triangular in shape in both sexes. So these are the relations in the male and these are the relations in the female. Urinary bladder in the male and the female. In both sexes, the base is non-peritoneal, and except in the male, where its upper part is covered with the upper part is covered with peritoneum. Now we will see the relations of the base. So this part of this non-peritoneal area of the base is known as the external trigone. So this base non-peritoneal part will be called as external trigone. Relations, if you see in the male, so this is the base. So this part is the base. It is related to ampulla of the rectum. So this is the ampulla of rectum, separated by the in the upper part by the rectovesical pouch. So this is the rectovesical pouch, and in the lower part by the following structures: a pair of seminal vesicles. So this is the seminal vesicle, ampulla of vas deferens. So this is the ampulla of vas deferens, rectovesical fascia. So this fascia is called as rectovesical fascia, which is derived from the fusion of primitive rectovesical pouch of peritoneum. So these are the relations of the base in the male. In the female, so this is in the female, this is the base. So it is related to the upper part of anterior. So this is vagina, anterior vaginal wall. So it is related to the upper part of anterior vaginal wall and anterior surface of, so this is the supravaginal part of the cervix. So anterior surface of supravaginal part of the cervix. These structures are separated from the base of the bladder by the loose areolar tissue. So these are the relations of the base in male and in female. Now we will see the superior surface. So we will take another color. So this is the superior surface and here this is the superior surface. It is triangular, mostly covered with peritoneum. You can see in this picture, you can see the peritoneum covering the superior surface. So this is the peritoneum covering the superior surface. Here also The male superior surface is covered with peritoneum. And it's related to sigmoid colon. So colon will be there, and coils of small intestine. And in female, it is related also to the anterior surface of anteverted uterus. You can see this is the uterus anteverted. So this is the anterior surface of anteverted uterus. So we have covered the superior surface also. Now we will see the infrolateral surface. We will take another color. So this is the infrolateral surface in the male, and this is the infrolateral surface in the female. It is related to both, in both sexes the relations are same. They are mostly non-peritoneal. It is related to pelvic surface of the body of the pubis and symphysis pubis. So this is the pelvic surface of the body of pubis and symphysis pubis. And fascia covering the levator ani, obturator internus muscle. This above structures are separated from the bladder by the potential space. So this space is called as space of Retzius. Space of Retzius, which may be asked as very short notes. Space of Retzius, which contains retropubic fat and a plexus of vesical veins. So this space of Retzius. Boundaries of the space in front. So this boundary in front. So this is the front, symphysis and body of pubis. Behind and on each side, posterior through ligament of the bladder. So these are the ligaments of the bladder. Above peritoneum of the paravesical fascia. So this is above peritoneum. Below puboprostatic and pubovesical ligament. Medially, infrolateral surfaces of the bladder and the prostate. Laterally, fascia covering the levator ani and obturator internus muscles. So this space of Retzius, you should understand in this picture. Contents of the space contain retropubic fat. It contains retropubic fat and also vesical plexus of veins. Importance: surgical operations of the bladder and prostate can be approached retroperitoneally through this space. Now we will see we have covered the surfaces: apex, base, superior surface, infrolateral surface. Now we will see the border, anterior border. So you can understand in this picture, anterior border. So this is one infrolateral surface we have seen. Anterior border extends from the, so this is the anterior border, extends from the apex to the neck of the bladder, separates two infrolateral surfaces. So this is the anterior border. Posterior border, it separates the base from the, so this is the posterior border, separates the base from the superior surface, extends between the entrance of two ureters. So these are the two ureters. So that is the posterior border. Lateral border separates the superior surface from the infrolateral surface. So this is lateral border, separates the superior surface from the infrolateral surface, extends from the one ureter to the apex of the urinary bladder. So these are the borders we have covered. So we have covered the presenting parts in the empty bladder. We have covered now. In distended bladder, we will see the differences. Before that, we will see the neck of urinary bladder. Anatomically, what is the neck of urinary bladder? So this is the neck. Neck of urinary bladder is the lowest point from which the urethra begins. So this is the urethra. So that is from which the lowest point of bladder from which the urethra begins. It is situated about 3 to 4 centimeter behind the lower border of symphysis pubis. So it is the neck we have seen, situated about 3 to 4 centimeters behind the lower border of symphysis pubis. In male, the bladder neck is surrounded by the base of prostate. So this is the base of the prostate. In female, it lies at a lower level and comes in contact with the urogenital diaphragm. So that is about the bladder neck we have covered. Bladder neck. You should be able to define the bladder neck and you should be able to understand the relations. Now in distended bladder, the shape is ovoid, presents the following parts: antero-inferior, postero-superior and two lateral surfaces. So it's slightly different. Antero-inferior surface, postero-superior surface and two lateral surfaces, summit, base, neck. So slightly different presenting parts in the distended bladder. So this ovoid, if you draw, you can understand. So this is in distended bladder. If you draw the ovoid shape of the urinary bladder, and this is the symphysis pubis. So antero-inferior surface is this surface, which was in the empty bladder, it was called as the infrolateral surface. Now here this is the antero-inferior surface. So that is extending. It is entirely non-peritoneal, extends above the symphysis by displacing the peritoneum from the posterior surface of the anterior abdominal wall. So the bladder distends and displaces the peritoneum of the anterior abdominal wall. Postero-superior surface. So this is the postero-superior surface, which is in the empty bladder. It is called a superior surface. So that is same relation related with sigmoid colon and intestine. Each lateral surface is partly peritoneal and not partly non-peritoneal. Same, it is lateral surface, which is considered as the infrolateral surface. Summit of the distended bladder is situated just behind the apex. So that is the summit. So summit is different from apex. Behind the apex it is situated. Base and neck are fixed and correspond to the empty bladder. So this is the distended bladder. Presenting parts we have seen: antero-inferior surface, postero-superior surface, lateral surfaces, summit, base and neck. The relations we have covered entirely in the empty bladder. Now we will complete this gross anatomy of the urinary bladder with the ligaments of the bladder. So in the ligaments of the bladder, we have true ligaments and false ligaments. So true ligaments, false ligaments will be the peritoneal folds always. So true ligaments will be the fibromuscular. So true ligaments and false ligaments. So first we will see the true ligaments. They are the fibrous bands with smooth muscle fibers helping the anchorage of the bladder. Altogether 9 in number, out of which one is developmental. So the true ligaments are 9 in number, one is developmental. The rest are produced by the condensation of pelvic fascia. What are they? We will see. True ligaments. One developmental is the median umbilical ligament. Median umbilical ligament, which extends, we have seen already, extends from the apex of the urinary bladder to the umbilicus. It is the remnant of the urachus. So it is the remnant of urachus developed from the allantois. Then 4 puboprostatic are, so one is median umbilical, 4 puboprostatic ligament or 4 pubovesical ligaments, 2 ligaments on each side, medial and lateral. Medial ligament extends from the bladder to the symphysis. So these are the puboprostatic ligaments. 2 we have seen. Pubovesical in the female. In the male it is called puboprostatic. They extend from the bladder neck to the symphysis pubis. Medial ligament. Lateral ligament extends from the bladder neck to the anterior end of the tendinous arch of pelvic fascia. Then a pair of lateral ligaments. Each ligament extends as a sheath from the infralateral surface of the bladder to the tendinous arch of pelvic fascia, and 2 posterior ligaments. Each ligament extends as a sheath from the side of the base of the bladder to the lateral pelvic wall. So we have covered 9 true ligaments. False ligaments or peritoneal folds, 7 in number. 3 folds anteriorly, median umbilical, and a pair of medial umbilical. So 2. Median fold covers the median umbilical ligament. Medial fold covers the obliterated umbilical artery. A pair of lateral false ligaments, 2 lateral false ligaments extends from the bladder to the lateral pelvic wall, form the floor of the paravesical fossae. Posteriorly, a pair of sacrogenital folds. Which extend from the lateral angles of the base of the bladder to the third sacral vertebra. So these are the true ligaments and false ligaments of the urinary bladder. So we have covered the gross anatomy of the urinary bladder in detail. We have seen the position, shape, capacity, presenting parts in empty bladder, and relations. And distended bladder also we have seen the presenting parts and also the ligaments of the urinary bladder. We will add a note on the interior of the urinary bladder. In the interior of urinary bladder, we have to, if you open the urinary bladder and see, you can appreciate a number of temporary mucus folds are present in the entire bladder wall except the trigone. So this is the internal trigone. So again, this may be asked as short notes for you. We have seen external trigone already. So this is the external trigone, that is the non-peritoneal part of the base of urinary bladder. Internal trigone, it is present in the interior of the bladder where this triangle part is smooth. It does not have the temporary mucus folds. So how to describe? It is an equilateral triangle on the inner aspect of the base of the bladder where the mucous membrane is smooth. The cause for the smooth part of the urinary bladder, this internal trigone, is due to the developmental. You will understand in our channel we have covered the development of urinary bladder. If you go through it, then you can understand this internal trigone is developed from the part of absorbed mesonephric ducts. So that is the reason. So if you see the boundaries of the trigone, this part is glistening due to the absence of submucous coat. You see the boundaries of this trigone. Apex is directed downwards. If you draw the like this, so these are the two ureter openings. And this is the one urethral opening. So this part is called as the internal trigone in the interior of urinary bladder. So this is urethral opening, and this is ureters. Apex is directed downwards and forwards. So this is the apex of the trigone. So this is the apex of the trigone formed by the internal urethral orifice, which is concentric in shape. Base is formed by the interureteric ridge, which extends between the orifices of the ureter. Each posterolateral angle of the trigone. So these are the posterolateral angles of the trigones. This is presents the ureteric orifice, which is an oblique slit. Sides of the trigone. So these are the sides of the trigone. Sides of the trigone are formed by the urethro-ureteric lines. So these are the boundaries of internal trigone. Internal trigone may be asked as short notes for you. Importance of trigone, it is the most fixed and dependent part of the bladder. And trigone, as I have already told, develops from the mesoderm, whereas the rest of the urinary bladder develops from the endoderm of the cloaca. So that is the development of urinary bladder. You go through the development of urinary bladder in systemic embryology playlist in our channel. You will be easy to understand. Now we will add a note on the arterial supply and venous drainage. Arteries and venous drainage of the urinary bladder. So arteries, superior vesical artery, which is a branch of internal iliac, inferior vesical artery, also obturator artery, branch from the inferior gluteal artery. In female, also the uterine artery. So these are the arterial supply of the bladder. Venous drainage, if you see, the veins form the plexus. That plexus will be called as the vesical plexus of urinary bladder, vesical plexus, which is situated along the infralateral surface of the bladder in the space of Retzius. So this vesical plexus is situated in the space of Retzius. This plexus communicates below with prostatic venous plexus in male and finally drains into the internal iliac vein through the posterior ligaments of the bladder. If you see the lymphatics of the bladder, they drain into external iliac lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are the external iliac nodes. Three different groups: anterior, intermediate, and posterior. From the apex and the infralateral surface drain into the anterior group. From the upper surface drain into intermediate group. From the base drain into posterior group. Now supplied both by sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system. Now supply itself is an important topic you should have learnt in the physiology of urinary bladder. Then this development of urinary bladder and congenital abnormalities of the urinary bladder are also important. You should learn. If you see the applied anatomy, so many applied anatomy in the urinary bladder. I will add some congenital abnormalities of the urinary bladder. Congenital rectovesical fistula, so that this bladder and the rectum may communicate. So that is the congenital rectovesical fistula. Congenital vesicovaginal fistula. Ectopia vesicae. So that's the gross defect. Ectopis cordis we have in our playlist. You can see that fetus delivered with ectopis cordis. That means heart is outside. So if you see that, then you can understand this. In our channel, we have the ectopia cordis fetus delivered in our hospital. So in this, if you see that, you can understand the ectopia vesicae. It's a gross defect where the anterior wall of the bladder is deficient and the interior of the bladder is exposed to the infraumbilical part of the anterior abdominal wall. So that is again one of the congenital abnormalities. So we have completed the gross anatomy of the urinary bladder in detail in this class. We have covered this topic in the various headings: positions, shape, capacity, presenting parts, and relations in empty bladder, distended bladder, then ligaments of the urinary bladder, and lastly we have added the trigone of urinary bladder, internal trigone, arteries supplying the urinary bladder, venous drainage, and also the applied anatomy of urinary bladder. I hope you should have understood this important topic. Those who have not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe now, and also you just press the notification so that you will receive the notification of the continuous gross anatomy, histology, and embryology topics in our channel. Do subscribe now. Keep watching the videos. Thank you.